New details tonight about how Florida school districts and publishers are moving forward after the state rejected a record number of math textbooks. The state says those books failed to meet Florida standards and that some of the books added references to critical race theory. I-Team investigator Katie LaGrone sat down with one of two Florida-based publishers who found his own company on the rejected list and in the middle of a nationwide story.
The student will go through and they'll answer each question.
As we all wait to learn exactly why 41% of math textbooks submitted by publishers to Florida's Department of Education were rejected.
Everybody's talking about this.
Meet one of those publishers whose math material landed on the state's rejected list.
Sure, it's disappointing.
Vinny Faris is president and CEO of Link Systems International, a small Tampa-based technology firm that publishes digital-only educational products, including this online math homework system.
The program will show you exactly how to do it.
For the first time, they submitted to be added to the state's lucrative list of approved instructional math material.
This is the thing that we're really all talking about.
And while it's been more than a week since they learned their products didn't add up to the state's newly adopted BEST standards, they only got the details why a few days ago, after the state issued this press release accusing some publishers of trying to indoctrinate students.
To not get any feedback across the board for anybody, that felt a little odd.
Since his material did not include references to prohibited topics such as critical race theory and social emotional learning, we asked Faris about these limited examples the state recently posted on its website. One shows bar graphs measuring racial prejudice by age and politics. And this one is titled Social and Emotional Learning.
I'm not surprised some of these books got completely declined.
That's because in this 2021 memo he shared with us, the state's head of public schools specifically advised publishers to not incorporate unsolicited strategies such as social emotional learning and culturally responsive teaching in instructional material.
Those were pretty egregious examples of just ignoring the Florida mandates, but I don't know if every single instance people will have that glaring of an obvious violation.
Across the state, Florida's textbook turndowns has school districts halting plans to purchase textbooks for next year. In Hillsborough County, the district is reviewing the list with publishers since 3 math books they selected were rejected by the state. In Miami-Dade, orders for all instructional math material are now on hold until concerns identified by Florida's Department of Education have been resolved.
From here, I can create new assignments.
For the next few days, this publisher and his team will be dissecting the state's scorecard to determine if making changes is worth more fuss than what they and other rejected publishers have already been handed.
It could be in a month that they're all back on the list. The story's not over.
Publishers have the next few weeks to appeal. Meantime, the state maintains it has a responsibility to ensure these textbooks align with newly adopted standards and do not include strategies prohibited by state law.
Digging into the backgrounds of the people who actually reviewed those textbooks for the state and raised the flags about their contents. Investigative journalist Katie LaGrone today obtaining the list of names and discovered some of those fact checkers don't have backgrounds in math or even live in Florida.
3 weeks after this press release accused some textbook publishers of trying to indoctrinate Florida students by including critical race theory and other prohibited topics into math textbooks, Florida's Department of Education has moved 19 of those books from the naughty list to the state's approved list after publishers revised what state education leaders call woke content. And while the state continues to keep the how and why of that content secret, we've discovered more about the who behind the original and historic 54 textbook rejections. After requesting the reviewers who evaluated these textbooks, Florida's Department of Education sent us this list. On it, the first and last names of 81 people listed as K-12 mathematic reviewers. Despite our repeated requests for their credentials, the state has yet to provide us with those details. So we went digging ourselves, combing through public records, social media accounts, and the web. We found while the majority are Florida educators with certifications, degrees, or other expertise in math, nearly a dozen are not. In fact, instead of math whizzes, we found reading teachers, social science educators, and history buffs also on the state's math reviewer roster.
I was really surprised when I found that out.
Carrie Denote has 2 master's degrees in math as a K-5 math instruction coach in Hernando County and president of Florida's Council of Teachers of Mathematics. So it's no surprise she was a recent reviewer. She says she evaluated 2 math textbooks, one for kindergarten, the other 4th grade.
I was looking at standards. I didn't see anything that was inappropriate or questionable as far as a math textbook goes.
As for why a civics or history teacher would be part of the math review,
I can't see a reason other than, they're looking for something specific. And I would just ask why they picked that particular person.
which explains why at least one history buff got the gig, and he doesn't even live in Florida.
Many of today's young Americans have never encountered this love for America's story.
That's Jordan Adams speaking at a White House conference on American history shortly after then-President Trump established a national commission to promote patriotic education.
Instead, they pursue absurdly simplistic explanations like class struggle and systemic racism.
Turns out Adams is a civic education specialist for Hillsdale College in Michigan. It's a conservative college working to expand its network of charter schools in the U.S. by using what they've dubbed Hillsdale 1776 curriculum, a learning style critics argue promotes politically conservative views of American history. Adams refused my request for an on-camera interview, but in limited responses to emailed questions, explained why his background in civics made him qualified to review math. Where the department sought assistance from individuals with a civics background was where the mathematicians who wrote the textbooks went outside of their field and introduced civics content, he stated. Adams wouldn't reveal any details about the textbooks he evaluated and if or why he flagged any. But in these reviewer evaluations made public by the state Thursday, Adams flagged a high school statistics book that may violate state rules prohibiting critical race theory when it included racism on several pages. To date, Florida's Education Department has only released 4 photos of examples it cites were found by reviewers for containing prohibited topics or unsolicited strategies.
Each state has its own process for reviewing mathematics.
Trina Wilkerson is president of the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, which recently advocated for equity in math education while denouncing any use of math for political gain. Wilkerson says while states have reason to include other subject experts in their reviews, the final say over math materials should always come from math experts.
The prominent voices and the feedback should come from mathematics teachers across early childhood, elementary, middle school, all of those areas.
On its own website, Florida's Department of Education lists qualifications for math reviewers, including holding at least one credential in the field of mathematics. As to why it seemingly didn't follow its own standards, FDOE's press shop wouldn't provide direct answers, stating in this email, the department seeks reviewers with content expertise and an in-depth understanding of the best standards, just like any state agency would seek to have multiple content experts review.
There was a political intent behind this selection process of the mathematics textbooks.
President of Florida's Teachers Union, which has been critical of the DeSantis administration and its lack of transparency, sums it all up like this.
This was all about political theater for the governor to say he is standing up to make sure that our kids aren't being indoctrinated with math textbooks. I mean, that's really what this was about.
And raising more questions tonight, why this list of reviewers provided to us by the state doesn't include everyone, including the one reviewer who submitted the most complaints about critical race theory. We've sent several requests to the department for answers. So far, no explanation.
Is it math or is it politics? That was the crux of the debate after the state rejected those text math books, saying that they were trying to indoctrinate students. And tonight, all new here, we're going to hear from the reviewer who raised the most issues. I-Team investigator Katie Lagrone with the story.
Personally, I like math, so I thought that maybe math would be fairly easy for me to review.
Chris Allen is talking publicly about what she found when she reviewed math textbooks for Florida's Department of Education.
Your biggest issues were with critical race theory.
Yes, I feel like just based on those findings that the state should not approve the curriculum.
Allen is an Indian River County mom, member of the predominantly conservative group Moms for Liberty, and has a son who attends a public elementary school. She volunteered to be a state reviewer after evaluating textbooks in her own district and finding issues she says her county ignored.
Our school board is quick to dismiss what we find. The same exact findings I gave to the state were the same ones that I gave to our district.
As part of her state review, Allen evaluated 2 high school level math books, both rejected by the state for including prohibited topics. Allen flagged them for containing social emotional learning and, she says, critical race theory.
Saying that racism is embedded in American history is considered critical race theory.
This is one example she described in a question about measuring racial prejudice by age and political affiliation. In another, she writes how a sentence about racism stated, as a matter of fact, that most people have slight or moderate bias. Allen took pictures. Both landed on the state's website as examples obtained from the public. According to evaluations recently released by the state, Allen was the only reviewer to find CRT in the books she critiqued.
I'm not sure. I mean, I don't want to speculate on what other reviewers were looking for, but I do know for me, not only did I look at how the lessons were taught, the examples, I also looked at what they actually were saying.
One of the books was also reviewed by a civics education specialist who we recently revealed was recruited from another state to find CRT problems. He didn't.
It could be that he didn't want to take up as much space as I did.
Allen was a guest reviewer, which meant she wasn't paid and didn't need special qualifications, though she says she has a degree in aerospace engineering.
Are you employed now?
I'd like to keep my employment private.
How much weight her input had on the books being rejected remains unknown. The state hasn't provided details of its process, copies of all the math problems in question, or how any of them were fixed.
This entire process by the Department of Education has been lacking transparency.
And that, according to Democratic Representative Anna Eskamani, doesn't add up to an honest overall review.
Not only was the one evaluator that had concerns about this not a legitimate evaluator, but finding CRT in these textbooks is close to impossible. That's not an issue.
Not if you ask this mom, who maintains what she found shouldn't be allowed in schools. And she's glad the state gave her an opportunity to say so.
I don't personally feel like you have to have a double master's degree or certifications to review a math book. I mean, I did tutoring when I was in high school for the lessons that were taught.
Of the 54 textbooks originally rejected, 28 have now been revised and approved. As for these reviewers, a spokesperson for the Department of Education would only tell me they sought out reviewers and they were all qualified. I'm Katie LaGrone reporting.